On this episode of Talking About Rock, Winger touring guitarist and Buffalo Music Hall of Famer Howie Simon. Talking About Rock is sponsored by School of Rock, North Buffalo, where they're making musicians every day. Hello, welcome to this episode of Talking About Rock. I'm Rob Edwards. Each week we bring you interviews with artists and music industry newsmakers in the world of rock. Today's guest has forged his path in music with bands from Alcatraz to Winger, and has worked with numerous talented musicians, including Graham Bonnet and Jeff Scott Soto, as well as a list of who's who in rock. He's performed in 23 countries around the world and was inducted into his hometown of Buffalo, New York, Music's Hall of Fame in 2017. He's also appeared on over 50 commercially released recordings, including studio sessions, CDs, and DVDs. And his playing also appears on TV show soundtracks, theme songs, movie soundtracks, and television commercials. We're very happy to have him with us before he heads out on tour with Winger for their dates in Europe. Let's welcome Howie Simon. Howie, how's it going, man?
Woo! Don't you have that canned applause that I was hoping you would have? So I feel better about myself now.
Oh yeah, it's great to have you here with us, man. Definitely. You're a busy guy, man. You got so much stuff going on here. You know, I was reading through some of your history. It looks like you started playing really, really young. You know, with some influences from the King, Elvis, Kiss, and was that really when you decided that you were going to pursue music, when you kind of saw those guys?
Well, I didn't get to see Elvis, unfortunately, but my mother had a huge collection of Elvis records when I was a kid, 45s, albums, the whole deal. And that was one of the earliest things I learned how to do was put a record on a record player. And that was like when I remember going to kindergarten class, and when show and tell, I would bring records in to show that I could play a record. But my mom had this one record, album. It was Elvis live in person at the International Hotel. It was part of his Vegas run. And there's a picture of him on the cover where he's holding like a big hollow body Gibson guitar. And there's a mic stand in front of him. There's all these knobs and switches and things. Like it's, a lot of technical things. And I remember just being a kid staring at this cover going, oh my God, this is the cool. What is that? What is that? Why are there knobs? Why is there buttons there?
Right.
So I used to listen to that record. I still love that record. That's my favorite Elvis record, and probably the only one I just listen to sort of regularly. And that was sort of my biggest influence. And the cool thing is, I've told this in a couple other interviews, but last year, that International Hotel in Vegas, that was, I think, 69 that he was doing that.
Yeah. That
became, for years, the Hilton. Right. And then Hilton sold it, and it became the Westgate. And with Winger, we got to play there a year and a half ago, give or take, last year. No, the year before, maybe, within the last couple of years. So I got to stand on the exact stage that Elvis performed that record on, that I consider my biggest influence. And they even, in the backstage area, they told me they've redone everything. The wooden stage has all been replaced, but they left one square of wood from the original stage where Elvis used to stand in the same spot, like right when the intro music was on for him. He would stand in one spot and maybe pray or something like that. And they left that one spot, and I got to stand on that spot. So that was a pretty cool moment.
Very, very cool connection there for sure. Very, very excellent. So did you start recording your own music pretty early on as well? Start working with other folks?
Well, after Elvis, I got into Kiss when I was a kid, and obviously loved them. And I don't know, probably in the time I was in junior high school, I did get a 4-track recorder. I bought it used off a friend of mine in high school, and I used to record stuff. I was the king of not finishing recordings back then. I would record and then leave it half done or never get back to it. So I probably have those tapes somewhere of just little ideas here and there, and just never got to follow through. But I was always working on that process, at least.
Yeah, I remember those days of carrying around the 4-track and the cassettes and stuff like that. And just, that's what you had to do. You didn't have like the tools we have today, right?
Right. But then I learned that I had a stereo hi-fi VCR, and somebody told me that's the same as digital tape. So you can bounce your mixes from the 4-track down to your VCR into 2 tracks and bring them back to leave you 2 additional tracks in your 4-track, and you're not going to lose any quality. So I used to start bouncing back and forth between the two machines, and I was able to start getting better sounding demos at least back then. But thank God Pro Tools came along.
Right, right. So we're also talking a little bit about the Kiss This tribute band. They have a new CD coming out that you've been involved with. What can you tell us about the project there?
Oh wow. Yeah, actually I happen to right sitting here on my desk. Um, I so this is a Kiss tribute in that Western New York area, as most people probably know. And the guy who does the Paul Stanley thing, Kevin Blakita, he's been a friend of mine since we were, oh God, probably before 18. I think we knew each other when we were like 15 or 16 years old. And we're still really close friends. We talk all the time. And he joined this Kiss band, I don't know, 10 years ago, give or take, maybe longer. And I've since become acquaintances with John Jeffrey, who is the Ace Frehley of the band.
Yep.
And I know they recorded a record a few years ago, and it did well. It was a charity record, so
Buffalo Rock City, yeah,
the first one, and
yep,
so they decided to do a second one and add some guys who are in national acts. I know Billy Sheehan's on it, Jeff Scott Soto, who you mentioned earlier, is on it, Dean Castronovo's on it.
yep.
So they invited me to play a tune on it, and I love old Kiss, so I said of course. So I got to record with Kevin, which was awesome. So he put his guitars down, and then they sent the tracks out to me, and I laid mine alongside his tracks, and we're the opening track on the record, which is "I Stole Your Love," and it was great because John Jeffrey got Johnny Joeli to sing on it, who played in Hardline, that old Neil Schon band from the late '80s.
Right, I remember that. Yeah.
Yeah, and I've met Johnny throughout the years. We've been on different bills together, so I know him. So that was kind of cool. And it came out great, and I guess the record's doing pretty well from what I understand.
Yeah, it's doing good. I was just speaking to him a little bit at the signing. They did a local signing here at Hi-Fi Hits last weekend, and I was talking with them. Yeah, Buffalo Rock City. Yeah, it's very cool stuff. The tracks that they're doing on there, and like the artists you mentioned that are featuring on the different songs, and yourself. It's great stuff, and all the money goes to charity. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a great cause. So that was I'm very happy to have been a part of it because of that.
Definitely. And you've recorded and played with, I mean, a truckload of some amazing artists. It's kind of crazy. And I was reading about your all-star project that they called it, I guess, Gunnar Nelson put that together. Was it scrap metal?
Oh yeah, the scrap metal thing that, unfortunately we haven't done that since before the pandemic, but before then we did a big run of shows with that. And it's basically, like you said, it's an all-star thing, and every gig was different guest who was available to do the gig, or whoever the buyer, the promoter wanted to hire in. Gunnar would give the promoter a list of, these are the stars that are available for your date, and he would pick 3 or 4 of them. But I think whoever, for those who don't know, it would be like the Nelson brothers, and usually most of the time Mark Slaughter, and me, and a drummer, and sometimes a keyboard player who was Gary Corbett. He played keyboards back with Cinderella, and he was the offstage keyboard player for Kiss for years, but he unfortunately passed away a few years ago from cancer, which was a drag. But and then what we would do is we'd come out and play the 3 most famous Nelson songs, the 3 most famous Slaughter songs, and then those guys, we would all stay on and be the backing band, and then people would come on and we would play their big 3 hits, like Stephen Pearcy, Lita Ford, Pat Travers, Barry Goudreau from Boston would do it, Michael Sweet from Stryper's done it, George Lynch has done it, Brad Whitford from Aerosmith, Elliot Easton from the Cars, that was a cool one. I'm probably forgetting a ton of Janet Gardner from Vixen, Eric Martin from Mr. Big, Derek St. Holmes. I met a lot of people, and that's how I actually met Kip Winger when he was a guest on that. And then a few years later, when they needed a sub guitar player, he remembered me from the scrap metal thing. We had met before that too, but he knew that I could pull off the Winger stuff, and that's why he called me in the first place.
Excellent.
Well, I've known him for quite a few years now. I met him at a NAMM show, the music industry trade show, for those who don't know. That's once a year here in LA.
Yep.
We met years ago, and I'm a huge fan. I don't mean like the old day stuff, but I was buying all their modern day records that they kept releasing every few years. And
Right.
I think he's a genius. I literally think he's a genius the way he writes. And I was drunk, and I think that was back in the days where he was drinking, so he was probably a little buzzed. But I went up to him and I said, "Hey, you're Kip, right?" And whenever he gets that question, he always expects like people to make fun of him for the Beavis and Butthead stuff or whatever. So
Right.
his
Right.
response is always, "Oh," like he
He's
cringes.
not sure. Yeah. I
Yeah,
had to ask him a little bit about that just to clear the air on that completely. Cause they got a rough ride on that deal.
he
Right.
got a rough
So,
ride. He got a rough ride on a lot of things that he did, and it's not completely unwarranted. So
right.
I went up to him and I said that, and he's like, "Yeah, I'm Kip." And I said, "The record that you guys just put out last month, the first song has these chord changes in it, and each time the end of the phrase goes to a different note." And I said, "How did you come up with something like that? I would have written it just to come up to the same note every single time. Like, where did those?" And each note is so weird and strange, and it becomes this beautiful, cool thing. And like, he looked at me like with shock that I was talking about this new song, and that was my first question. And he looked at me and goes, "You get it, don't you? You're a guy that gets it." And so we talked for a few more minutes, and that was it. So years later, when he was one of the guests on the scrap metal thing, and I saw on the schedule Kip Winger. I'm like, "Oh, this is going to be awesome." He remembered me. He's like, "I met you at the NAMM show, didn't I?" And we talked. Like, he remembers it even to this day. I sometimes forget this story I'm telling, and he's like, "Remember that NAMM show thing?" Like, so I love the guy. I think he's brilliant. He's funny. He's got a very dry sense of humor that's not for everybody, but because I have that kind of sense of humor as well, like, I love it. I love being out with him. The songs are great. He brings his performance 100% every night. So, and I guess I should clarify for those who don't know, I am not a member of Winger. I am a sub for the other guitar player named John Roth. He was the guy that replaced Paul Taylor in, I think, somewhere between 91 and 93. And then Paul Taylor came back, but they kept John. So they're a five-piece band, when in the old days they used to be four. John, who I sub for, also plays in Starship featuring Mickey Thomas.
Right.
I say that because there's another Starship out there touring. And when Winger and Starship are booked on the same weekend, John gives me the Winger gig and he goes to the Starship gig. And that's been an ongoing thing. I've been doing this for 6 years, and the last couple of years, because Starship is so busy, it winds up like I wind up doing, like last year especially, I wound up doing probably 90% of the Winger dates, and John just did a handful, and this year is kind of shaping up to be that as well. And then once last year for the first time, and it's going to happen again this year, there's sometimes a show with Winger that John absolutely has to be at, whether it's like they're on a tour or they're going to film a live thing later in the year. So on that particular weekend, we're going to actually swap, which I've done once before, and I'm going to go with Starship, and John will go with Winger. So, I mean, I have to, besides giving accolades to Kip, John, who I didn't know before all of this happened, but now I'm really good friends with, puts all his trust in me to go out and make sure that either one of these bands doesn't realize, "Oh crap, there's a sub here." Like, I make it so they don't even know there's a different person there. I learned everything exactly the way John does it, all his vocal parts, which are very important to both of these bands as well
Right.
as playing. And so I'm tipping my hat to, and John's an amazing guitar player and singer, amazing. He was years ago. He was in Black Oak, Arkansas for a while, and he's done a bunch of other projects. He's now the recording guitar player for the band Giant. When they're not really a thing other than a recording project, but he took over for Dan Huff, so he's got to be good. And like I said, I for both of those guys and the whole Winger camp in general, like for them to put their trust in me for this many years, it means a lot to me. It's really been very cool overall.
Yeah, very, very cool. Yeah, and you hit it on the head. Kip is just an amazing songwriter. Classically trained. You hear
Well,
those nuances.
he's writing classical symphonies. He's written a Broadway musical. It's insane what this guy does. Like, just insane.
Yeah, definitely great stuff. Very, very cool, man. So anything else going on with you, or that's pretty much it? You're just getting ready for Winger then to come back out, right?
Yeah, the Europe run's coming up, and it's been a while since I've been to Europe many times, but it's been a while since I've been there. I think Alcatraz was the last time I was there, and that was more than 10 years ago. And we're getting ready to do 5 shows in 5 different countries over 10 days. And this, I've never done a European tour the way we're about to do it, where we fly to each country every other day. Normally, when I would go over there with Jeff Scott Soto or with Alcatraz or with the Swedish band Talisman, I used to do it with Jeff as well. I'd fly one place, and then we would either drive everywhere in a bus, or we would take ferry boats, or like the flying every day. That's going to be a lot. So
That's going to be a little tough. Yeah. Well, in addition to working with him, you also worked with Jeff Scott Soto on his solo albums, and I was also reading you guys did a remake of one of the songs he did back in the day with Yngwie, "Don't Let It End," which is one of my favorite songs. I just thought that was such a great song when that came out. You know what I mean? So the early stuff was so cool.
yeah, that I loved that Marching Out record. It's still one of my favorite records of all time. And when Jeff got called, he did a thing called what the hell was that record called? I'm sorry, I'm spacing on that. Duets Volume 1. So what he decided to do was go back through his huge catalog of stuff that he's done and re-record some of his most well-known songs. But instead of just re-singing them, each song he'd bring a friend in, a special guest singer. Like, so that's why it was called Duets, obviously. Duh. And he said, well, I want, he had a bunch of people on the record besides me. I did 2 songs on the record. But he said, I want you to do Don't Let It End. And I was like, dude, that's kind of like sacrilege to me, because that song to me is almost perfect, like as far as an old school heavy metal song. Like,
Yeah.
do we really want to revisit it and have me bastardize it and people make fun of me and stuff like that? He's like, oh, it'll be fun, blah, 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 blah. So I played bass on that as well. So I said, okay, let me do guitar and bass, and let me, just do what I want to do. And he's, yeah, do whatever. Just send it to me when you're done. Because when Jeff and I record, it's always through email. I just do it at home and send it to him, or vice versa.
Right. So easy nowadays to do that. Just send files and stuff.
But so that way I don't have, anybody breathing over my neck. So I did it, and, I took some time, and I'm like, well, do I want to redo the whole thing, or do I want to make this exact? And I decided to learn the solo as it was, and even all the little guitar fills. I figured I really need to learn those as they were, because anything different is just not going to be right. And it wound up, they did a video for it, which is a little strange. There's some woman in the video that I don't know what it is, but I recorded my video parts separately. Jeff recorded his, and Dino Jalusic was the who's done like Trans-Siberian Orchestra, and he was in Whitesnake a couple of years ago, and great singer. And he was the co-singer on that one, and he did his video parts separately. So, when it came together, the video was like, but we've already had like 500,000 views on the video, which I guess in this day and age isn't too bad. No. And I'm pretty happy with the way it sounded overall and the way it came out. And my performance, I'm actually, I can listen to it, so that means it must be not too bad.
Yeah. Just so those early tracks were just so cool and so great. I love that. Love that. When I saw that song you guys had redone it like that, yeah, that was a great choice. I thought I understand where your point of view is with it, though. Like that song and like I Am a Viking are some of the songs that like just like stick with you, I
appreciate you saying that, because I was while in the process of that, I was worried, like every day biting my nails. I bite my nails anyway, but biting my nails extra, wondering, well, how is this going to be accepted? And I know people are, those songs on that record are pretty well. The other ones are, well known from his career, but I knew that one was going to get some extra scrutiny. And right. It seems like it's mostly, even the comments on the video are mostly positive. There's a few here and there, but whatever. You got to take those with a grain of salt. But I'm glad you said that. Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. You're always going to get that in this day and age, right? There's always going to be somebody that's going to sneak something in there that happens, And you've also done a bit of work in TV show themes as well, movies. Can you tell us a little bit about some of the stuff you've been involved with in that?
Yeah, that was a long time ago. I don't do that so much, but I've done some stuff. I used to work with this producer, singer guy who hired me in on a lot of that stuff. So I don't even remember. I think the one that comes to mind was Ace Ventura: Pet Detective, the animated series. He had me play guitar on that, and there was a bunch of other stuff I used to do with him that was in smaller TV shows and movies. But that was cool. That was a long time ago. I did that in like the '90s.
Gotcha. Gotcha. And you also do some acoustic shows, right? You're also doing some of the unplugged kind of a thing as well
Yeah,
at times, I've read.
I do. I do. I enjoy that. I do a lot of that stuff here around here in LA. I don't have my calendar in front of me, but I've got some stuff coming up. I was doing the Hard Rock in on Hollywood Boulevard in Hollywood quite a bit until the booking agent left. But I did a bunch of shows there, and I've been filling in for a friend's acoustic duo out in Indio, California, which is past Palm Springs, out in the desert at a really swanky casino out there. And I did New Year's Eve there with him, and that's like working man's stuff, nothing super exciting, but I really like doing the acoustic stuff because that's where I get to play the music I love, which is like they're calling it yacht rock now, but that
Right.
70s AM radio stuff, that's mostly my playlist. All those one hit or two hit wonders from the 70s. That's kind of my thing there.
Yeah. Yeah. I definitely have a playlist like that myself and just go through. I went through that this past Memorial Day weekend. It was like a 70s playlist weekend for me, for sure.
The best music ever, it was all real. There was nothing edited in a computer or digital or fake. It was like, if those guys messed it up when they were recording, they would just go back and do it again until they got it right.
Yeah, and the songwriting I think then was very real, very raw feeling, and very emotional back then. You know what I
Because
mean?
it
At
was
least,
because it was actually that they were writing songs. It
yeah,
wasn't constructed on a computer. They weren't starting with beats on and a program on their computer and then working from there. They were writing melodies and unbelievable chord changes around them. It's kind of a somewhat lost art now.
yeah. And now we're in the day where like there's a group of people like they don't really care if they're playing live, right? And then there's the other people. It's like, well, I'm only going if they're live. You know what I mean? There's kind of like a divide with that. I don't understand it myself. Obviously, I'd like to hear it live like it is. If the artists are still able to do that, that's what I want to hear. You know what I mean? But there's some
Uh,
folks that just like they don't care.
Winger is 100% live, no backing tracks. So you get all the warts or whatever. Um, I'm not opposed to a little bit of help here or there. I've been in bands where we had some keyboards and we didn't want to, it was a little bit of keyboards here or there, and we didn't want to have a whole other guy there just to go once in a
Right.
while,
That's
like
totally different. If there's like intro or there's little section or something like that, that's totally understandable. You have that little section, yeah, for sure.
all right,
And
well, I guess we're in agreement on that.
yeah, and I think you also played in a local LA band, The Hard Way. Are you still playing with them at all a little bit, or is that just an older project also?
No, 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 no. Well, it belongs to a singer named Eric Jeffries, who's a good friend of mine, and he had another guy who I filled in for a few times when he would go on vacation. But that other guy, who's a great guitar player, he moved like around the pandemic time. I don't know if it was before or during. He decided to move, so he was, gone. And I just told Eric, hey, when you get shows, I'll do the shows. It's not a super serious band, but it's an all original project that Eric wrote all the songs. That's the singer, like I said, and we mostly play opening slots for cool national acts, and usually at the Whiskey A Go Go. But we've done a few other gigs. We did the Rainbow Bar and Grill anniversary show out in the parking lot there last year, and the problem is right now it's just our schedule's a little bit slow with that, and I'm really busy with Winger, so if there's conflicting stuff, there's nothing I can do. But I mean, it's been a kind of a who's who of who we open for, which is always kind of cool. Like I think we open for Ace Frehley, Lita Ford, Firehouse, Jackal, Warrant, and bands like that usually.
Right, right. And now you guys are on the ticket, yeah, with Lita Ford and Tom Kiefer band, right? I think you're doing shows, right?
Yeah, well, with Winger, we went out all last summer on the Live Loud tour, which was us and Kiefer for majority of the summer. So I saw that I guess it did so well that they're adding a few extra dates this summer where we're playing with Kiefer, and Lita's on the bill. She was not with us last year, so that's really cool because everybody in her band, especially the drummer, are really close friends of mine. Bobby Rock is like, I've done tons of gigs with him, and we're just close. We talked on the phone last week. So I'm looking forward to those shows because everybody in both of those camps is really cool people. It's about the hang really more than anything else, just to
Right.
be around people that are just always, fun and friendly.
Definitely, definitely. I was also reading you also were teaching lessons online at one time, but now you're doing some private lessons in LA. Is that
No, no,
still
no, no,
going
no, no.
on?
No, I do both. My private lesson business is not as big as it, used to be. Like a few years back, I was, slammed like 3, 4, 5 days a week sometimes. But, with the advent of the internet and tons of free lessons on YouTube for anybody, and with the economy being the way it is, a guitar lesson for a lot of people is a luxury. So I still have a few private students, and then I started doing the online thing sort of during the pandemic because nobody wanted to come around, and then I just sort of kept doing it, and then I've got a couple students now who moved out of the LA area but wanted to keep maintaining the lesson schedule with me, so I just do it online. So if anybody watching this is interested in private one-on-one personal instruction, reach out to me like with a private message on Facebook, and I'll get right back to you.
On Facebook. Okay. You don't have a website or anything? Just check out on Facebook.
I have a website, but it's it's this antiquated internet 1.0 thing that people make fun of, and I'm gonna get it redone at some point, but it's almost so old that it's comical that I don't want to lose it now, because you go to howiesimon.com and get a good laugh, but the last time I updated it was 2005 maybe.
Right. Yeah. Well,
But
you've been busy doing so many other
I
projects.
put everything on my Facebook, and I've been slacking a little bit on Instagram lately, but I do somewhat maintain my Instagram. And then again,
Gotcha.
whatever. If anybody's interested, just send me a message. I'll tell you what I'm doing.
Cool. Cool. I always like to ask artists as well, musicians, what gear you guys are using. You're doing a lot of endorsements here. So you're probably using DiMarzio pickups, Diodario strings. Do you have certain guitars or certain amps you go with, or do you like to mix it up sometimes? Or
Well, yeah, I'm very, very, very fortunate to have some great companies behind me, and these are companies that before I became, involved as an artist with them, I was already using the product anyway. So
right.
I don't chase the free stuff just to get free stuff. I'm actually uh, very happy to have been associated with the two that you mentioned, DiMarzio and D'Addario, um, since I think I signed up with both of them in 1997 or 1998. So what is that? 100 years ago?
Right.
And since I was a kid, I was using the products, but they are very helpful to me, especially when I'm going out on these runs and I want to use something different. But I guess the other companies to mention are Electrosonics wireless systems, which I've been associated with for a few years now. Um, I got hooked up with Bad Cat amps a couple years ago. The unfortunate thing with Bad Cat is we don't have the budget to travel with full amps. So I have the Bad Cat stuff here. I record with it. I do anything in this area with it. If I go to Vegas, I'll drive instead of fly and bring my amp. But fly dates, unfortunately, I can't bring them at this point.
Yeah. Yeah. You don't want to be lugging a back line to fly dates
I
for
can't.
sure.
You just can't. So, but the other companies, I just got hooked up with ProTech cases, who gave me a really nice Contigo case for this upcoming run in Europe that I've got with Winger. FU Tone, who makes aftermarket hardware for guitars, bridge blocks, bridge saddles, springs, all kinds of stuff. Uh, Adam River's the guy there, and he's been just great. Like, I've been replacing all my parts with much more, well, upgraded is the best word, but like stuff that makes the guitar just sound way better. Who else? I've been with Pedal Train, Voodoo Lab. They've been giving me stuff throughout the years. Why am I spacing? I'm spacing. You put me on the spot. Oh, Exotic Effects.
Oh,
My
okay. Yeah.
pedal board is loaded with exotic effects stuff.
Very cool. Very cool. Lots of cool stuff. So, like we were saying earlier, getting ready to head out for shows with Winger, but I think I saw you guys have a free show coming up, like also, right? That they were talking about maybe something like that coming up.
Free show.
Is there a gig or a show that you guys are going to do or something? I thought I saw something about that before you guys headed out. No,
Well, I don't. It's not free, but
it's not a free show. I'm sorry.
no, we have a warm up
A
gig.
warm up gig. My
Yeah,
mistake. It's not a free show. It's a warm up gig. I misspoke. Yeah.
this coming Sunday. I don't think it costs much to get in, but it's this Sunday in Wyandotte, Michigan. I think. Let me double check here real quick before I stick my foot in my mouth. But
Yeah, I just saw it before you popped in. I'm like, oh, we probably want to mention that's going on before you guys.
Yeah, the venue is called District 142, and that's in Wyandotte, Michigan, outside the Detroit area this Sunday. There are still a few tickets available, so if anybody's in Detroit or if anybody, I guess I know a lot of your listeners are in the Buffalo area where you are. It's not that far of a drive. Come on out on Sunday and see a great show.
Yeah, we have listeners from all over the place, but yeah, but a lot of folks in Buffalo definitely listen to us as well, for sure.
Yeah, that's great.
So, so folks want to get a hold of you. They want to know more about you. So they should check you out on Facebook or check Winger out for the dates for your shows or anywhere else.
Correct. And you can. I usually post my stuff on Facebook, even if you're not hooked up with me on there. My page is open, so you can see everything that I'm up to.
Okay, so HowieSimon.com. You can check that out. Very, very cool.
For a laugh, yeah.
All right, my friend. Well, great having you with us today. I really appreciate you taking the time, man, catching up with what's going on. I hope I could catch you guys, man, when you come, but I'm not sure if I could be able to catch that show, but I really need to. I know.
Come on.
I really need to see that show. And that's such amazing. That's an amazing bill. You, Lita Ford, and Tom Kiefer.
Get out of your bedroom and come support live music. We every band, no matter who it is right now, needs the support at the shows.
Definitely. That's what I always tell my audience all the time. All right.
Hey, thank you very much for having me here. This was great.
Thank you, Howie, so much. Have a great night.
Yep. Take care.